Hi everyone, and welcome to this new episode of Science of Doing Science. Today I receive Philippos Louis, researcher in the economics department at the University of Cyprus. When I invited Philippos to join this podcast, he was not sure that he had something to say regarding meta-science. Our long discussion regarding how his work can help improve the functioning of democracy quite proves the contrary. I hope you will enjoy listening to this podcast as much as I enjoy recording it. Can you present yourself? Where are you from? What are your area of expertise, etc.?
So I'm Philippos Louis. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Economics here at the University of Cyprus. I'm originally from Greece, but I spent actually my formative years doing my undergrad here at the University of Cyprus. I studied public and business administration. I then went to Barcelona, where I did my master's and PhD in economic analysis. I then had periods in Switzerland and in Australia for some postdoc work. And I've been back in the Cyprus since 2017, the Department of Economics. And my area of research is mainly behavioral and experimental economics. And in particular, I look at behavioral game theory, as well as studying how institutions shape behavior, be it economic institutions, but also political or collective choice-making institutions.
This is where we will talk mostly about voting and political institutions. So I went to your Google Scholar profile, and your PhD thesis was written in Spanish.
No. It was written
at
in
least
English.
The abstract is.
I think that was translated because
Okay.
it's a Spanish university, so you also have to submit a Spanish abstract. But no, it was written in English.
Okay.
Although I did have to, like during my years in Barcelona, I also had to teach either as an assistant or even as a lecturer some courses, and I had to teach in Spanish.
So you
as well.
speak Spanish? Well.
Yeah, I'm lucky enough to have learned that language as well. Yes.
So your PhD is mostly about information, and how information is related to voting or markets. In terms, I've written markets in terms of expectation.
Mm-hmm.
This is basically what I understand, but it's a lot. So if I understand well, you publish your PhD thesis and then you publish some papers based on your PhD thesis.
Yes. So in economics, I'm not fully aware how it works in psychology. In economics, a PhD thesis is not necessarily a very unified piece of work. Sometimes we just say informally, you just have to write 3 papers, and then you put them together. Often you see the title being essays in, and then whatever, behavioral economics or whatever. So that was sort of what was in my case. And then these papers were, they are loosely related because in all of them, like you said, there were these issues of how people behave in response to the information they have or they receive, and how the particular institution forms that behavior. And then that was my PhD thesis was that, and then I continued working on these topics and also expanded my research as well.
Okay, so basically in terms of voting, so there is a link between economics and economic theories and democracy, how democracy works. Mm-hmm. And so basically your research makes a bit the link between the two, because you studies the voting system, the voting and how information is related to voting. So this is basically what we will talk about during this interview, at least for the first parts. So basically you said you talked in your PhD thesis you wrote about the voting system and information everybody has to know to make the voting a good system, or at least the majority voting a good system.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. This is interesting because in terms of meta-science, science has to be applicable. So this is an important part of meta-science. How do you think that economics can help democracy improve or to be better?
So I think what the perspective from economics, which I think can enrich this debate, is that whenever you set down some rules, and we talk about democracy, but the different democratic systems, we all agree they are democratic, but each one has different rules. How democracy works here in Cyprus, how it works in Greece, in France, in the US. We would all call these democratic systems, but they all have different rules. So our perspective is that when you set down rules, it's like setting down the rules for a game, and then depending on these rules you set down, the participants in this game, the voters and the politicians, they react. They know what these rules are, and they try to do whatever is best for them, which does not necessarily mean for them personally. Maybe what they care is society or their family or their whatever the social group may be in that society, and then based on these rules, they act in order to achieve the better results, what they think is the best results for them or their group or whatever. So understanding this interplay between what are the rules we set down and what is the behavior that comes out, and then the interaction of this behavior to give us the final outcomes is what economists understand, I think, quite well. There's still a lot to learn, but at least they have the tools and the experience to study these sort of issues of how the rules shape the game, if you like.
And the outcome of the game. So
and of course, then once you shape the behavior in the game, it also shapes the outcome. I mean, just to give an example of what I mean, because maybe it sounds a bit of abstract. If anyone follows basketball, you have the NBA, and then you have European basketball, and these two look very different sometimes. Like NBA seems to be much more flashy, a lot of attacks, very high scores, etc. In the European basketball is maybe more, scores end up being much lower. Is that just because players are better in the NBA and they score higher? That might be a part of the story, but also a big part of the story is there are some differences, even very small differences in the rules in the NBA and in the European, or the FIBA, basketball, the international basketball rules. And these create different incentives and different behavior, and then the outcome, say how high the scoring is in every game, ends up being different.
Okay. One of the first papers you published is Learning Aversion and Voting Rules in Collective Decision Making.
Mm-hmm.
One of the first one. And there is something very interesting regarding information for the voters, is that you said some voters oppose the arrival of new informations.
Yeah.
So I guess it is in an economic game, but how can it be translated into information related to democracy?
Exactly, yeah. So, I mean, this is studied through an economic model, a game theoretical model, but of course it has some implications about how we shape our democratic system. So the idea there is that, well, first of all, generally we think, more information is better. The more information we have, the best it is. And certainly from an individual point of view, this makes a lot of sense, right? If I'm about to make an important decision, choose between two products, two type of investments, or whatever, the more information I have, the better I can judge what is the best choice for me. Now, within a group, that can be more challenging. That's not so straightforward. That's what I'm discussing in that paper, where I show that, say, we both, if we knew what the best, I give the example of an interview. Say we need to hire a candidate. We have two possible candidates, or there are two possible policy choices. And we have some information. Given the information we have originally, say candidate A, we both agree that candidate A is better. Now, if we get some more information, maybe that could convince us that, actually it turns out candidate B is better. What's important there is maybe you are less conservative than I am and somehow a bit more favorable towards candidate B. So what I am worried now is that maybe some information comes, it convinces you that candidate B is better, but it doesn't convince me. And then if we get into this disagreement, that would be bad for me. So I would actually prefer that we don't get any more information, just so that we stick with our original choice of picking candidate A or policy A or whatever. So what this shows for the general democratic debate is that, simply translating some axioms like more information is better and everybody likes more information into more information in a collective choice setting is better and everyone would want it is not so straightforward. And then one can see that also this will depend, of course, on also what is the decision rule that we use. Like if I have veto power, then I don't care. Then I would like more information because then I know that I can always, even if you prefer candidate B while I still prefer candidate A, I can always veto the choice of candidate B. So then I'm fine. Let's get more information. And if it convinces me as well that candidate B is better, then we agree. But if I don't have this veto power, if say you have the final word, or it's not only you, but you and someone else, and you have a majority, then I will be more reluctant. So where exactly you set the choice rule, do you use a simple majority or do you use a supermajority or even a unanimity rule, can affect this demand for more information that the group may have.
It's a bit related also to lobbying. Like lobbying is putting more information, giving more information for one side of the story, and so that the voter can be. So the participants, the voter will not have access to the other side of the story or the other information. So this is
exactly. So I mean, the particular paper does not touch on lobbying, but that's exactly a very good point. Like when we think about lobbying, one can say, well, one can bring the argument lobbying brings out, puts more information. You just need, and any side can lobby, so that should be good because you get more information on the table. At the same time, one has to think, but maybe not every side has the same access or the same resources to get that information, so that may create an imbalance. So you might want to set some rules. Who can lobby, how much they can spend on lobbying, etc., etc. And then understanding how these rules will affect the lobbies, but also how they will affect the other side, the ones asking for information, is also important.
There is also the point of false information, and strategies of debunking false information, things like that, which is also a big problem in terms of the more information, the better, because you don't know if the information is true, reliable, or not.
Yes, that's actually a quite active part of research. Personally, I haven't worked that much in it, but I find it very interesting. Understanding what are the conditions that can give rise to false information, and that also starts touching there then into often we see that false information would only make sense if also the receivers of information might not be 100% rational in how they process that information. Typically, they're not. No, exactly. But exactly how they are not rational, and that's something I think a fascinating field of study.
And there is also this part of cognitive overload.
Mm-hmm.
You said at the beginning of your explanation, if we have to choose between candidate A and candidate B. But in France, and in the first one, we have like 18 candidates, and we don't even remember the name of all the candidates. So there is also this problem of too much.
Exactly, yeah. And so that's too much information can also, in that sense, be problematic because we cannot really process it. And then what we often see is that people end up focusing on some more salient figures. And what makes them salient is not necessarily what we would like. Maybe it's just the one shouting more or the one being more flashy or more aggressive or in their campaigns. Yeah. So the one that ends up being more often on our screens, be it television or a mobile phone, social social network app or whatever. So that is a problem. There's also another problem. I mean, sometimes we also observe, actors, let's say not good actors, might take advantage of this information overload. So maybe they cannot give you, make you believe some false information, but they can feed you with so much noise, so much false information of different sorts that it buries whatever true information or reliable information is out there. And I think that's something that has been observed in these information wars happening in the past, let's say, decade or so. And that's another big problem that one needs to figure out how to address that.
Is it possible to modelize or test it with economics experiments, all of this, or just field experiments? Or
I think all different methodologies, I think, have their role to play. Economic lab experiments, the ones I tend to do, I think would be more focusing on how individuals process information, how they react to different types of information, say to information overload, or to different sources of information that might be more or less reliable. I think their lab experiments can teach us a lot. Now, when it comes to more to studying the effects this may have on a systemic level, say on a market level, how we would call it, perhaps there I would definitely accept a point of view that would say, well, lab experiments there can't really tell us a lot, and then maybe some field data or even field experiments would be more useful in that respect. But like I said, I think because that's often, since we also discuss science and how we do science, etc. Often, I think there's unnecessarily a kind of debate between, this methodology is good, this methodology is not good, where it should be, right, for the specific question that we have, research question that we are facing, what is the best methodology to use? Perhaps it's more than one, and they complement each other, and it should be like that, and not lab experiments are the only way of finding out the truth, or no, field experiments are the only way, or other type of like randomized controlled trials or whatever. I think all these different methodologies have their usefulness. They all complement each other, and at the end, what's important is what is the question you're trying to answer.
Yeah, we will come back to this question at the end for one of your very recent paper. I will not spoil everything. Okay. I just wanted to add a little bit on this first study we are talking about, because we talk about misinformation, we talk about cognitive overload, but there is also something that I am not sure how to understand it, is that you said, so information, the more the better. We have seen that it's a bit limited thing, but most of the time information is shared, even if it's true, is shared as everything has the same weight. But it's not the case. For example, if we have information regarding this candidate will do a lot for fighting climate change, and this candidate will do a lot for some cause that is not related to like the end of the world or things like that, the weight is not the same. So it's very interesting because the more is better, but how can we process which information is more important than the other? And related to what you propose, that is there good ways to oppose some information because you don't think that they are relevant to the problems of our country or the problems of our group, etc.?
Honestly, that's a good question. I think my view would be, so at the end, what is important is also depends, and in a democracy, I think it should be like that. It depends what each individual themselves think is important, and then the democratic process is the one that will end up telling us what, as a society, we should prioritize or not. So I think if someone thinks that, say, climate change is the most pressing issue, which is, it's definitely, I agree, it's a very pressing issue, it's a very important issue, but not everyone might agree. Maybe someone thinks, well, at this particular point in time, the world potential of a third world war is more pressing than climate change. And, to each individual, they have to judge what's more valid. So I think there it is legitimate in a democracy that every group that has a different opinion tries and convince the rest of the society that their view is correct. So I think then if you have different sources of information, that is fine. It's not so much. I think each group should try, within the rules of the game of democracy, try to promote their own view, and then if say the group that thinks climate change now should be the number one priority, that would convince people to disregard information about this guy was a great say actor when he was young, so vote for him. And they should focus on what does this guy say about climate change.
It's interesting because in the way you are saying it is that you have the groups, then you have informations, and the group take care of the information to make a vote. It's a bit like in this sense. Most of the time, it's also that the information pre-exists to the group, or it will influence the group before the groups are created. It's like because of the social medias, because of the television, because they all inform people, and it will shape the beliefs of the people before an election will appear.
Yeah.
So
no, I think you make a good point. I think actually it's a continuous feedback loop. I mean, the media are not there by themselves. There are people that are in the media that control or influence the media and what the media talk about, that set the agenda in some sense. And definitely it is true that also we don't always know exactly what we want maybe as individuals. So we look at the news or other information sources to help us shape our preferences and make our decisions about what to vote. But I think it goes in both directions. You will have groups of people that are much more convinced. They didn't expect to see what's on the news or what's in the media to shape their opinions. They already have these views. Maybe they also have better access to information, and that's why they have these views.
Or maybe access to better information.
Or access to better information. Or also maybe it could also be because these issues affect them more. For example, it's not very surprising that the young care more about climate change. I think makes a lot of sense because they have to live in this planet for much longer than other generations have to.
Yes, but I have a counter-example because I have an Instagram account where I vulgarize studies in psychology. There's one very interesting study that I vulgarized yesterday who said that, so they took 5,000 of young participants and it was a survey, and they asked them how concerned they are toward climate change, and then they asked them how many clothes they bought during the year. And it was the young person that was the most concerned about climate change who bought the most clothes the last year. And so they say maybe it was the second-hand clothes, but for these people, second-hand clothes accounted for 13% of the clothes they bought. So there's a big difference between their mindset, their beliefs, and their behaviors. This is very interesting also.
It is, but also one has to think that often, we may believe, we understand, or we may understand even that, for example, a specific climate change threatens life in the planet as we know it, at least. So it can cause great harm and great changes in the way we live. And the young care about that more than, say, older generations. But you then talk about the behavior, like one should think then, okay, if you care about that, then you should align your behavior in a way that does less damage as possible to the environment. But actually, to translate it, it's not an easy task. You mentioned buying clothes, how much clothes you buy, but there's so many of our choices every day that we have to do that may affect the environment, and often in ways that are not even straightforward and might be counterintuitive in the way they do so. And then expecting, especially from younger generations, to immediately see that is maybe asking too much of them already. So I don't see that as so puzzling. In fact, I think we often see this type of contradictions. People say, "Oh, I believe that," and then you say, "Yeah, but you behave in this way," which goes contrary to what you say. I think we find that also with older generations sometimes, and especially I think with something like climate change, it's not so easy. What it tells me is like, the ones that are in favor of policies to stop climate change that are based also on more knowledge and more information. So mainly the scientific community to a large extent, and politicians that have these type of sensitivities and knowledge, they should also act in the best way they can to inform the public how their choices affect these things. So buying clothes very often is not good for the environment. Something as simple as that.
The overall level of information.
Yeah.
And then it's also interesting in terms of making step-by-step information, because you say they're not much. They might not be mature enough to understand the relationship between their behavior and their beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
So a step-by-step information saying, okay, it harms the environment, but then the information, you should not buy more than I don't know how many clothes per month or things like that to not harm the environment, things like that.
Yeah, I mean, this could be a way, making the information easier to digest. I would say, in general, educate. What's the best way of education for this particular issue? I think then, the specialists on that can weigh in and tell us maybe this is a way or maybe that is a way. But I think, educating the public about what exactly is that can harm the environment, but also then thinking of things that maybe the young generation does not have enough experience to think directly about. Is like, what are the policies we should set at the national, European, global level? How should we change the way we do commerce, etc., and change these rules that you don't need each and every one individual to fully understand how the entire global supply chain works, and having to think of that every time they go into the supermarket or in another shop and buy something, but have policies there that ensure us that the global supply chain works in a way that is less harmful to the environment as possible.
It's interesting because related to clothes, I don't want to spend a podcast on clothes, but really interesting is that we don't know if Vinted, the platform Vinted, the person who buy clothes on Vinted are doing more harm or more good to the environment because they don't release their data.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is that it seems most people goes on Vinted, buy one piece of clothes, use it 1, 2, 3 times, and then sell it again.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is that the transports from one person to another person, it consumes a lot of CO2.
Mm-hmm.
The question is it worth it? And we don't know because we don't have the data.
Yeah.
So, because you say people don't have to know about the chain of the chain of transport, the chain of fabrication, etc. But it could be interesting in this regard, saying is it worth it or not?
No, it's absolutely a good question. So, by the way, I only found out about Vinted a couple of weeks ago from a friend abroad. So I have never used it. So just if anyone listening doesn't know, it is a platform where you can, if you have things, I think is it only clothes or is it also other stuff?
I think it's only clothes.
So say you have clothes at home that you're not using, you can post them there and sell them to someone else, and they can buy it. So it's an online platform for buying and selling used clothes, and it's quite popular. It seems, at least abroad. I don't know, maybe also in Cyprus. I haven't heard about it. So, yeah, absolutely. I think sharing information. So having platforms like that, sharing data, sharing information. I think would be extremely valuable. Why? Because then it would give access to that data to researchers that could go in and answer this type of questions. And I'm also, again, I would not be in favor of going and saying, oh, at the end, we take the balance and it's negative for the environment or it's positive for environment. So, and then just say it's negative, so close Vinted, or it's positive, so open it. It's more
about, for example, the people from ecological association, they say to have a piece of clothes that is worth it, we need to use it at least 30 times.
Mm-hmm.
And in general, people use a piece of clothes 7 times. So for most of the clothes we buy, it's not worth it. So this is like having this kind of information that helps people saying, okay, we need to do better and use it better.
Exactly.
And if you put it on Vinted, then the 30 times might be 35 or 40, we don't know.
Yeah,
but it would be interesting to have
absolutely. And I mean, and like I said, that's exactly information that should be out there. It would enrich the discussion, and then I think creative people would come up with policies and ways. One could say maybe then if it is now for it to be sustainable, you should wear something 30 times, but people don't like it. They like to change more often. How are ways that we can make clothes fabrication more sustainable so that it won't harm the environment, or the balance will not be negative, even if you just wear it 10 times or 5 times or something like that. So, like I said, one thing is to give information to the public to make the decisions with more knowledge and more information and adapt their behavior to that. But at the same time, there should also be a push on the other side to adjust the rules of the system of the market to make it more sustainable without the need of people always entirely changing their behavior. I'm not saying people should do whatever they want and not care about the consequences. No, I think it's important. But it's both. We should look at both and also not become. That's more of a personal thing. Very judgmental about you do it like that, you are bad, and you should feel ashamed and bad of yourself for doing it.
Yeah, because
this
it
way
to reactance.
Exactly, and also we see that often. Then it has a boomerang reaction, because then we say, oh, actually, you should not buy from the chain stores. You should buy from Vinted. But then new research comes out and say, well, actually, Vinted doesn't help either. So I'm not so sure that labeling different behaviors as morally right or morally wrong is so helpful. It just creates more confusion, I think. Giving more information, allowing people to make their decisions, and at the same time trying at the policy level to change the rules that will make the markets more sustainable. I think it's the way to go.
Information is so the word information is so general, and it leads to so many different characteristics. It's very interesting.
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating field. I mean, I studied from the point of view of behavior and economics, but I think there's so much to. It's a very powerful concept. So I read a book. I don't remember now the author. It's called The Information, and it actually opens your eyes into.
The title is The Information.
Yeah, and opens your eyes to a lot of what this concept hides beneath it.
It's pretty straightforward for a name. I would like to move on the next paper called Improving on Simple Majority Voting by Alterating Voting Mechanism, I think is the
Alternative voting mechanism. Yes.
Alternative voting mechanism. That's true. First of all, can you explain what is majority voting?
So majority voting is what most people think of when they think of voting, which is okay. We're a group of people, a bunch of people, so we have to choose between again A and B. So let's vote. That's what everyone would say, and most people feel very comfortable with this type of voting. So they say, okay, it's 10 of us, 7 voted for A, 3 voted for B, so we do A. It makes a lot of sense. Has a lot of things that go for it. What we do in this paper, actually, this paper is more of a review. We review other papers that attack this issue. There's one issue. It's not the only one, but there's one issue with simple majority voting, which is it doesn't take into account the intensity or how much people care about one alternative or the other. So, say you do a referendum and about let's say building a new park. Okay, so then building a new park has a cost, so it costs some money. So you ask people in the city, should we build this new park? It will cost so much. So you will all have to pay a bit more taxes to finance that. If you spread the cost of the park to the whole population, there's a small cost they have to pay. So a lot of people might feel like, okay, why this park is not really close to where I live, but it will cost me some money, so I don't really care, and they vote against it. At the same time, people that live really close to the park, they will also have to pay some small cost, but they really care a lot about it because it can really change their quality of life, having a park at a walking distance close by. So their intensity is very, very high. They care a lot. So say the park costs 10 euros for each citizen of the city, but then the value for the people that live relatively close to the park might be 500 euros or even 1,000 euros in terms of how much it improves your quality of life. Now, if you use a simple majority, the majority prefers not to spend 10 euros and getting a very almost no benefit out of this park, so they vote against building this park. It's only a minority that would like to have the park, so the park is not built. But if you would take in terms of value, the intensity of how much they like it, this minority actually would really, really like it. Now, simple majority does not allow the participants, the voters, to express this intensity. My vote for the park is the same as your vote against the park. You have a vote, I have a vote. Even though for me, the value this park would have is much, much higher, while for you, you're against it, but also don't care so much if it's built or not. So there are situations, not always the case, but there are some situations where this may matter a lot, this intensity of the preferences. So we end up with decisions taken with a simple majority, which if you take a step back and say, okay, but as a value for the whole society, is that the best choice? The answer would be no. So we see that simple majority sometimes lead to what we call inefficiencies of this type because of not looking at the intensity of the preferences.
It reminds me of a story made by Thoreau, U.S. philosopher.
Mm-hmm.
He talked about slavery because it was at the time when slavery was in place in the U.S. And he says, okay, there is a referendum about should we continue having slaves in our country, and he said there are only 3 types of people who will be in place for this vote. There are the slaves who cannot vote but will be against slavery, of course. There will be there will be the owners of slaves who also, for most of them, the people who have the medias, the newspaper, also have slaves. So they will put a lot of information in these newspapers regarding how it is important to have slaves. And there will be the people who never see slaves, who don't care about slaves, but will follow what is inside the media and will say yes. And he says it's a big limitation to democracy because the 2 types of people who will vote in this situation will vote yes, we want to continue slavery. But the people that are most interested in this referendum cannot vote either. So
this actually it's an interesting point. It's definitely related because it goes like to the other extreme. It's like you have the people that, like you said, like care the most. They have the most strong intensity, and whether they care the most about not having slaves, because that would mean they would be free. And it's not only that their vote counts the same as others. In that case, it doesn't count at all. They cannot vote. So the only ones that have vote are either the ones that would like to have slaves, or they don't really care about whether slaves exist or not. So that would be the complete extreme. But it's worth noting that actually, even if everyone participates, and it's a very democratic principle to say, each one's vote should count the same, and definitely for most. For many of the decisions in a democracy, I definitely agree. It should be like that. Each one's vote should matter the same, and definitely it should not matter whether you have, say, whether you're richer or whatever.
Yeah,
At the same time,
but then in your paper you talk about the tyranny of the majority.
Exactly. Because there are some cases where you might have a minority. But the particular issue that you're voting on affects that minority the most. That's like the example I gave with a park. Yeah. And then you have a majority that doesn't really care much. Might be very easily influenced by the media, because it's not a subject an issue they deal with every day. They don't have much information. They just read something in a newspaper or on the internet. It convince them or slightly sway them to one side, and they go with that, which might be against what this very much affected minority would prefer to have. So it's not an easy. There's no easy answer to this question. That's also why this paper is a review paper. So the different ways one could go about it. And they all have their pros and cons. I can't say, like, going over this literature, and it's still an active literature, there's no clear-cut answer to how can we find a different system that takes into account this, how much people care about a specific thing, without falling into other traps. Like, just to give an example, what could be such a system? Say you don't only have one vote, but you can buy votes. You can buy more votes. And the more votes you buy, then that means if you care a lot, you will buy many votes. If you don't really care, then you might not even, maybe you don't even vote, or you only buy one vote, or you just get one vote, and that's enough for you. That would mean that, okay, people that care more about something, they could express this intensity by buying more votes. Of course, this opens up other questions, but then it means that people that have, they're very rich, they have a lot of money, they can buy a lot of votes. And because they have a lot of money, it's not a big cost for them, big sacrifice for them. So at the end, it might be giving power to people that just have a lot of resources, a lot of money, and not necessarily solving the problem. Or people might care a lot about something and not have the money to buy the necessary votes. So this is just an example of one of these issues that come about. So it's not an easy question, but it is still, I think, something that matters, and we should find ways. It's not something I think anybody would suggest. That's the way we should elect our president or elect our members of the parliament. But for example, at the end, it is something that you do see happening, say in corporations. When you have stockholders, when they vote, they have more votes if they have more stocks. Yeah. So. And there, no one is debating whether it is democratic or not. It makes absolute sense. So there could also be other cases in the society where we could find examples where maybe some voting system that allows people to express their intensity and that matters for the voting outcome would make sense.
Can you talk a little bit about the third limitation called the winner takes it all?
In this voting,
in majority voting.
Well, it is the system. It comes with democracy. The majority wins, and they get it all. It's more of a technical issue, I guess. It's compared to other for example, if you vote for a parliament, there you don't have a winner takes it all. Say if there are, to make it simple, two parties, one party gets 60% of the vote, the other gets 40% of the vote, then one gets 60% of the seats, the other gets 40% of the seats, or something similar to that. That's a system where you don't have winner takes all. In a winner takes all, it means you have a party wins 60% of the votes and they get the whole of the parliament. So that's the simple majority voting in many of these cases that we study in the paper is about winner takes all. So you have a majority, you win it all.
Okay. Well, when I read this paper, I was. It reminds me of a citation who said, "Democracy is not the rule of the majority, but the protection of minorities."
Yeah.
It's from Albert Camus.
So that's very much in the spirit of what we're discussing. It's like exactly these minorities, why they need to be protected, because if we go to an extreme, if there's a majority that would like to kill the minority, as we've had big wars fought about that in Europe in the past, then obviously the minority cares a lot about staying alive, but they are a minority. If you just say, oh, look, we all came together, we voted, and the majority wins, so now we kill you, that's obviously not very democratic. I think there's a lot of truth in this quote, that maybe democracy is not only about that, but a big part of a democracy should be that also minorities should also be protected. A system in which the majority can always impose themselves to a minority, and there are no rules in place to protect the minority in some crucial issues, is not necessarily a democratic system. I think it's important, this quote, because it highlights the idea that a democracy does not mean that a majority should always do what they want, which is often what we are confused about, or maybe when
because we learn that
exactly when we're kids, it's
democracy
easy.
is about voting.
Exactly, we learn as a kid it's the easy way to learn it, and it is true. It's a big part of democracy that if there's a problem, we vote, and whatever the majority wants, we do it. That's part of democracy. Another big part is that also the weak or the minority should also not be allowed to be exploited by someone stronger or a bigger group of people, the majority.
The next study I was interested in is the virtuous cycle of agreements. I read the abstract. I'm not sure about the conclusion about it. So it's up to you. I don't know what kind of question I can ask, but does it help in our discussion? Does it inform something?
I think it does, because it now takes... So up to now we're discussing how the rules of you set for, say, making a collective decision can affect the outcome, and if it's a good outcome or bad outcome, however you want to call it. In that paper, we go, with my co-authors, we go a bit beyond that. And what we find is, having some rules means you have to go through a process of kind of, we all want different things. We will have to come to some compromise, let's say. Now, we reach a compromise, but then tomorrow we might need to revise that decision, or we might need to take another decision. So the question here is, will the process we used for the original choice affect how we feel about that choice tomorrow? And what we find is that, you can have reach the same outcome through different processes. One could be very polarizing, where each side has incentives to really aggressively protect what they think is the best choice to make, while you could have another process which is much more consensus seeking and trying to make everyone to kind of agree on a common ground, let's put it like that. And in the end, the final outcome might be the same, so we might make the same choice in both cases. Let me make a simple example. Say it's pretty hot now. So say we have to set the temperature for the for the air conditioning. Where should we set it? One process is, well, you say what you want, I say what I want, and we just take the average.
Yeah.
You would like it to be very cold. I would like it to be quite warm. But now, because I know that you will want it to be very cold, I say it even warmer. So we go both to the extremes. At the end, we take the average. Maybe we could say something else. Let's say, between what temperatures would you be happy with? What's your maximum and your minimum temperature? And I do the same. And then we find some common ground there, and we choose that common ground where these two intervals overlap, and that is our decision. So we show in the paper, well, my co-authors, Dimitris Krefteris and Matthias Nunes, have already shown in a different paper that processes that look like that can actually give you the same outcome. But what we do in our paper is that we show, like, look, the outcome is the same, but you reach it through one is very polarized and the other one is very consensual. And now we want to say, okay, now after you've reached this decision, this common decision, the next day we have to say make a same decision, or maybe it's your turn now to set the temperature. Will the fact that we took this decision in a very consensual way affect your preferences about temperature today? Or if we did it in a polarized way, would you have different preferences today? And what we find is that it matters. And indeed, that's where the virtuous cycle of agreement comes, is if we use some mechanism, some process that gives us incentives to be more consensual and to seek a common ground, that makes us much more willing to adopt this decision as our own preferences. So if, say, we agreed yesterday through a consensual manner that the optimal temperature would be 23 degrees to set the air conditioning, even though I wanted it to be 27, when I set the temperature tomorrow, I will set something much closer to 23 than what I would have done yesterday on my own.
So it means that we have a preference toward the system based on how we already use this system.
Well, not a preference towards the system, a preference towards the outcome.
Towards the outcome.
So if we both agree that this is what we should do, and we agreed to that through a consensual process, then we would all support this outcome much more the next day. While if we come to an outcome, but we arrive to that outcome, maybe it's the same outcome, but we arrive to that outcome through a very conflicting, polarizing process, then maybe if there's a chance to change it, we might take each one individually might take the chance. So also this outcome will be much less stable, because our preferences will not have changed. So each one of us will still want to bring that outcome closer to what they prefer. And we miss this opportunity of having some outcome that we all feel good about. So that's why it's giving an argument in favor of these processes. Like, if we can use a process that is based on consensus, then this will not only give us some outcome today, but we will also feel much better about this outcome tomorrow after we've been through this process. And that's something that in the paper we do it. We show it with an experiment. So we were discussing before about lab experiments. So we put that in the lab, and we show with the data in the lab that people feel that way.
Okay, really, really interesting. Okay, the next one is trimming extreme reports in preference aggregation. This paper, when I read the abstract, it reminds me a lot about how the voting system in France works. In France, we have 2 rounds.
Mm-hmm.
The first round, basically, everyone can apply to be elected. It's very easy. So we might have 15, 18 or 20 people who want to get elected, from the extreme left to the extreme right. And at the end, we know, because as a French person, I had 3 or 4 different elections, so I know how it works, and everybody know how it works. Is that at the end you only have one candidate from the left part, one candidate for the right part, or one candidate for the middle part, to be to the second round, and then for the second round we have to choose between one out of the two candidates that are left.
Yeah.
So basically, the trimming is extremes mean that, as far as I understood that, is that if we throw away the candidate for the extreme left and the extreme right, it will, at the end, we will have the same outcome, but it still change the way people are thinking about it. You said that people are doing strategic voting, but when we vote for the extreme right or extreme left in France, in this first one, we are not really strategic because we know at the end he will not be elected.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I'm not so sure that it would apply to like what you describe, what you have in France and they have in other countries. I mean, here in Cyprus, it's the same for the presidential election. It's a runoff election. So you have first stage, and the two candidates with the highest proportion of votes go to the second round, and then you choose between the two.
Yeah, and we know who they will be.
Yes, but you more or less know. In that paper, what we look at is more a system. It's not about trimming the outcomes. It's more the votes themselves. So a closer example to that is, and again, it's voting not necessarily between A and B, but it's more related to the example I gave before with the temperature of the air conditioning. So you have a continuum of choices. You have a line where you have to make a choice some point in the line. That might be the temperature. It may be where should we build the park, which part of the street, and then everyone wants the park to be as close to their houses as possible, or these type of things. And then the votes are specific points on that line. Different examples will be when you have to, and we are a committee that has to end up with grade a specific candidate, like they do in the Olympics with skating in the Olympics. You know, we are a committee of judges, and we have to agree what is the final grade that we put to a particular athlete, and we all give a number, say from 1 to 10, and then you take the average of these numbers, and this is the score of the athlete. Now, what we show in this paper is that in that case is, well, actually, some people have suggested there that maybe then you trim the highest and the lowest vote as a measure of avoiding people to go too much to the extreme. All right. So in the case, like I was saying before, for the temperature example, if I want a high temperature and you want a low temperature, then, and we take the average, I might go even higher, even higher, even higher. You will go even lower, 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 lower. The outcome might be the same, but we have these very large extremes there. So, and think about it, if it's then more than just the two of us, if it's 10 people working the same office space, one suggestion is maybe you could just trim the highest and the lowest, and that takes away this incentive of going the highest, of going higher and higher and lower, going to the extremes, just to get something closer to what you want. What turns out is that that's not necessarily true. Even if you just take away the highest and the lowest, there's still incentives there to go extremely high or extremely low. There are some other effects, and that's what we studied there. So again,
it's difficult to translate.
It's very difficult to translate, and that's something I think often we think of democracy and collective choices. We often think about only the top elections, electing the president, maybe the parliament, things like that. But there are actually collective choices being done, every day at many levels, like from simple family that has to make a choice, but also within companies, within organizations. Here at the university, we once a month we sit around with our colleagues and we have to make choices about how do we hire someone, do we change something in our curriculum, et cetera, et cetera. In buildings, will the building what hire a new company to administer the cleaning of the building? and they have to make a choice. So that collective choice is being done every day in all aspects of life. And only thinking, okay, majority voting, say, that's the only way. It might be a very good way, and I think it is a very good way to elect our president or members of the parliament, and in many other cases. But then for many out of these collective choice problems, you might want to use some different techniques and mechanisms. And at the end, because it is also important for democracy, because democracy is not only how you elect the president every 4 years, but it's how, as a society, we make choices either all together, either at also different levels, smaller levels. How do we make collective choices there?
This is a perfect conclusion for this first part of this interview. The last one is very straightforward. I'm interested in a very recent paper called Communication and the Emergence of a Unidimensional World.
Mm-hmm.
Reading the abstract remind me of a small story that I already shared in this podcast. When I was an undergraduate student, I had a teacher of mine who talked about religion. And she said, when we ask people about religion, we ask them, do you believe in God or not? Yes or no?
Mm-hmm.
And she said that one time she asked the question, how strong do you think that God exists? From 1 to 10, things like that. And she said many people will vote 4 or 7 or 6, 7 or 3. But the person who votes 4 and the person who votes 7 or 6, they are closer to each other than the person who votes 4 and the person who votes 1, or to a person who votes 6 and a person who votes 10.
Mm-hmm.
So when you had the question, when you can vote yes or no, and when you have question in scale, the information you have is far different.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, what about if we have qualitative question, like asking them what they think about God, the existence of God or not, how, or what religion means to them, because religion might not be only related to believe in God. And she said there's so much variation in how people are thinking about it. And I told this story to Michalis Michailides, and he said it's the same for feeling good. When you ask someone if he feels good, this person doesn't understand obviously if it's now, if it's the whole day or the whole month or etc. So this is very complicated to have a scale. How good do you feel?
No, I absolutely agree. And for example, you probably know this, like when the elections close, you get these websites where you can go and you answer a bunch of questions, and then it tells you where you stand in, say, the political spectrum. Actually, it's a two-dimensional political spectrum usually. And one of my issues with these are often I find like the questions are not, for me, what I would say the right question. I feel like I don't feel comfortable saying either I agree or I disagree, because I think my true answer would be much more nuanced. So it's related to what you say about religion. It's not just you believe in God or not. It can be many layers to that, and many other dimensions as well. This is somewhat related to what we show in the paper you mentioned. What we look at there is exactly this idea that actually, be it religion, be it politics, be it many other issues, there's so many dimensions on which we have opinions, and we can, in principle, be very different and unique. And we are, I think, each one of us quite unique. An interesting, though, finding is that often, and I think the political spectrum is a very easy example to follow. There is like, there's so many different issues that politics deals with, and we all have different opinions there. But often it's just, are you more on the left or are you more on the right? And you can actually put the scale, I'm more to the center or whatever. But it's kind of, for a social scientist, I think it is bit puzzling, maybe like, why do we have, with so many different dimensions, why is it usually just one dimension that we are using to describe left or right? And one obvious answer is, well, it's convenient for us scientists because then we can, take that, put it into a model or whatever, analyze our data, makes it easier. But that's definitely not satisfying.
It's easier for individuals because they can stereotype.
It's easier for individuals as well. But then the question is, okay, makes sense to have only one dimension, but where does this dimension come from? Because one could think, like in politics, for instance, you can say, okay, then you open the book on the left, you read all what should be your opinion on each one of these issues, and then you are on the left, or you read the book on the right, what are your opinions, and then this creates a left or right. And partly that is, you have ideologies that dominate in different times, and could give us an idea why the spectrum looks the way it does. But also at the same time, it doesn't really explain, but why is someone that's on the left, say in France, the same as someone who's on the left in the US? Probably not. And also, is being on the right in France the same today as it was 30, 40, 60 years ago? Again, probably not. So even the spectrum is not really that fixed. So there's an alternative explanation, and I also don't believe there's a unique explanation of why we have the many different factors, but there's one other factor that has been proposed, which is actually maybe if the way we shape these opinions has a specific form, then the process of forming these opinions, and the idea is that you talk every day with some people. They tell you tell them your opinion, they tell you your opinion, and then you sort of kind of average out these opinions. And these are your opinions today, and then tomorrow you talk with them again, and then you do the same. Okay, and this slowly forms your opinions. Well, turns out that at least mathematically, you can show that if a simple process like that, or something that looks like that, maybe it's not so formal, but something it's as if this is what you're doing, should lead to this unique spectrum, unidimensional spectrum. So even if there's myriads of different dimensions that you're exchanging opinions about every day, at the end you will only need a single dimension to know. So knowing that you are on the left, let's say, quote unquote, on this dimension, means your opinion on this issue will be this, on that issue will be that, etc. And this is not a binary thing, left or right, but it is on a like somewhere you could be in the center of that spectrum, more to the left, even further to the left, etc.
Do you mean it's like a cognitive process saying that we need to simplify the world, or it's...
This idea of if we form our opinions in this way, actually it is a very simplistic way of forming your opinions. Just listening to what your others say and saying, okay, I'm taking the average of what I believe, what they believe, and I just move somewhere. This is very simplistic. But it might be, for example, if opinions is about information, do you believe something to be true or not? Actually, if you do it once, it actually makes a lot of sense. If I have no idea if this is true or it's false, and I then ask 10 people, do you believe it's true or false? And 4 tell me they believe it's true, 6 tell me, or 5 telling me that it's false, I believe it's false. Then I take an average, how likely do you believe it is true? Only 40%. So it makes sort of sense. Now, repeating it does not make that much sense because you don't realize that, well, but already these people told me their opinion yesterday, so that's already into what I believe today. And they also listened to what I told them yesterday, so they're already influenced by that. So if I'm just taking now their average, that's not very necessarily the best way to kind of integrate all that different information. So it is a simplistic way. But if this simplistic way kind of describes what we are doing in every day, and there's some evidence that it might in some cases, then we should reach this unidimensional spectrum. And this is what we show in the...
It's a bit tricky in terms of political decision because I don't know for all the country, but in France we have political polls. and you can, for example, if you are a rich person, you can buy a poll about a particular question, and you can phrase the question the way you want, and then you have the opinion made based on the question.
Yeah.
It's very tricky in this sense, because then you can show on your newspaper and the television the results, and people will say, okay, so much people agree for this, I haven't realized before. So
Yeah, no, absolutely, and even more, it doesn't have to be even a big poll. Like, with social networks now, you could influence, even target specific individuals with specific information and kind of shape their opinion towards one direction and the other. So absolutely, and like I said, it's not that that I think this is the only way that you get a unidimensional spectrum in politics, but I think it could explain a lot what we also observe outside of politics. Like often, if we look around our friends' circle, we will find, you maybe it's not only single dimension, but often you can say, oh, for example, this person is more posh or less so. And then by saying that already, you know how they feel about many different things, not necessarily the political ones, although there might be also correlation with the political views there. But, what type of food they like to eat, or what type of coffee, or where do they like to go on holidays, or what type of clothes they like to wear, etc., etc. But yes, absolutely, understanding how people form their opinions is important if we want to also understand then how people might want to try and manipulate these opinions through either polls or social networks, social media, etc.
Thank you. Are you convinced now that you have things to say about meta science?
Well, when you asked me to come, I said I'm not. I find it interesting that you see the connections on my work with meta science. Let me put it differently. I think economists like myself that deal with how institutions are shaped and how information affects behavior. Yes, I do agree that that's very important, and I think that's where the very big contribution can come from economists to the whole field of meta science and how should we do science, especially because a lot of part of how science is made is the institutions that you have. How is science made? You write articles or present in conferences, and there are, for example, committees or groups of reviewers and editors that decide on whether something will be published or not, whether you will be invited to a conference or not, etc. There are committees and groups that decide on promotions, and we don't say who's a better scientist, but to get promoted, you need to be, quote unquote, a good scientist. Who decides that are committees or groups of peers or your colleagues at the university that decide whether you get promoted or not. So, yeah, I do think economists can contribute into this discussion quite a bit with their research on topics like the ones I study. So, in that respect, yes, I think you were right.
Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And see you next time.
Thanks.
Thank you.